Okay, so you want to own a ranch. A ranch can produce a seven-figure cattle check and still leave its owner short of cash. That contradiction explains more about ranch ownership than the postcard image of horses, open grass, and a quiet house beyond the gate. The sale barn may send money only a few times a year, while feed, payroll, repairs, fuel, veterinary care, insurance, taxes, and loan payments keep moving every week. So the real question is not whether a ranch can generate revenue, it is whether the land, livestock, infrastructure, financing, and weather can be managed together without forcing the owner to sell productive assets at the wrong time. By the end of this breakdown, you will understand what a working ranch actually owns, how a cow-calf operation earns money, why land value can rise while operating profit remains weak, and which decisions separate a durable agricultural business from an expensive lifestyle property. The word ranch is financially incomplete. A cow-calf ranch breeds cows and sells calves. A stocker operation buys lighter cattle, adds weight, and resells them. A seed stock ranch sells breeding animals and genetics. A hunting property sells access to wildlife. A guest ranch sells lodging, meals, and experiences. A horse operation may earn from breeding, boarding, training, or events. A recreational estate may keep a small herd, mainly to preserve the character and agricultural use of the property. These businesses can share fencing and scenery while having completely different customers, margins, staffing, and risk. This video focuses on the commercial cow-calf model. Because it reveals the central tension of ranch economics, the cattle create annual operating revenue, but the land usually absorbs most of the capital. That tension begins with one measurement that buyers often overlook: carrying capacity. An acre is not a standard unit of cattle production. 1 acre with reliable rainfall, productive forage, good soil, and accessible water may support far more grazing than an acre in dry, rocky country. Stocking decisions also change with season, forage condition, animal size, and management. This means cheap land can require many more acres per cow, longer travel distances, more water development, and more winter feed. Expensive land may grow more forage, but its purchase price can be too high for cattle income to support. The correct comparison is not price per acre. It is the total annual cost of supporting one productive cow, including the land, forage, water, labor, and capital tied up around her. You're watching Ownership Anatomy, where we break down what it really costs to own and operate different businesses, how they make money, where the money goes, and what risks owners face. If you enjoy clear research-based business breakdowns, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone interested in entrepreneurship, USDA. Data shows why national averages must be handled carefully. In 2025, average pasture value across the contiguous United States was about $1,920 per acre. But the regional averages ranged from roughly $946 in the mountain region to $5,720 in the southeast. Average farm real estate, which includes land and structures, was about $4,350 per acre. Those numbers describe broad markets, not a quote for a specific ranch. A parcel with water rights, road access, irrigated hay ground, mineral interests, development pressure, or proximity to a growing city can trade far above its region's agricultural average. Another parcel can look inexpensive because it has weak forage, difficult terrain, limited water, poor access, or costly deferred maintenance. The listing price is therefore only the first layer of the acquisition decision, aid whether to own all the grazing land, lease part of it, or combine an owned headquarters with rented pasture. Full ownership requires more capital and may create long-term equity, but it also adds mortgage pressure, property taxes, and responsibility for major improvements. Leasing reduces the initial purchase requirement and can make herd expansion more flexible. But the operator may lose access when a lease expires, face rising rent, or hesitate to improve land that belongs to someone else. A mixed model can preserve a permanent operating base while allowing herd size to adjust. The trade-off is complexity. Cattle may need to be hauled between properties, fencing and water quality may vary, and a drought can make leased acres unavailable precisely when the herd needs them most. The land alone is not an operating ranch. Productive acreage must be connected by a system. Perimeter fencing contains livestock and protects neighbors. Cross-fencing divides larger fields into grazing units. Gates, lanes, corrals, and loading areas control animal movement. Wells, ponds, pipelines, pumps, tanks, and troughs move water to the places cattle actually use. Roads must carry feed trucks, livestock trailers, veterinarians, and emergency equipment in poor weather. Hay needs dry storage. Machinery needs shelter and fuel. Workers may need housing when the property is remote. None of these improvements guarantees higher selling prices for calves, yet each can determine whether the operation functions safely and efficiently. Water deserves special attention because a ranch can have grass and still lack usable grazing. Cattle need reliable, clean water positioned so they do not overuse one pasture and ignore another. A failed pump can remove usable acreage even while forage remains. Backup power, storage, multiple water points, and routine inspection are operating safeguards. Better distribution can support prescribed grazing, where animals move according to forage supply and recovery, rather than repeatedly weakening the same plants and soil. Edding cows are not merely inventory waiting for sale, they are biological production assets. Each cow consumes forage and capital for months before producing a marketable calf. Some fail to conceive, some lose calves, some require treatment. Older or unproductive cows must be culled and replaced. Bulls are needed for natural breeding, unless the operation uses artificial insemination, and bull quality can influence calving ease, growth, fertility, and the marketability of offspring. But superior genetics do not eliminate operating risk. A valuable animal can be injured, become infertile, or fail to perform under local conditions. Herd investment must therefore include replacement planning, health protocols, handling facilities, and enough liquidity to avoid postponing essential care. The basic cow-calf revenue cycle is simple to describe and difficult to execute. Cows are bred, calves are born, calves nurse and graze, and the weaned animals are sold or retained. Revenue depends on how many females become pregnant, how many calves survive, how much weight they gain, what buyers pay at sale time, and how much value is lost through transportation, poor health, uneven groups, or weak marketing. A ranch may also receive money from cull cows and bulls, breeding stock, retained ownership, direct beef sales, or custom grazing. But every added revenue model changes the business. Direct beef sales require processing access, customer acquisition, inventory management, and regulatory compliance. Retaining calves longer increases potential sale weight but also extends exposure to feed cost and market movement. The largest operating cost is usually feed in one form or another. Even when cattle appear to graze without a purchased feed bill, forage is not economically free. Owned pasture carries capital and maintenance costs. Leased pasture requires rent. Hay production uses land, fertilizer, machinery, fuel, labor, storage, and repairs. Purchased hay exposes the ranch to regional shortages and transportation cost. Mineral supplementation, protein, and other feed may be needed depending on forage quality and animal condition. A wet growing season can reduce winter feeding needs. A dry summer can force the ranch to buy hay early, sell cattle, rent distant pasture, or haul water. Feed pressure can therefore rise at the same moment that the herd's productive capacity is falling. Labor creates a second hidden distinction: cash expense versus economic cost. A family ranch may report modest payroll because the owner and relatives perform much of the work. That does not make the labor free. Their time has an opportunity cost, and the business may depend on work that would require paid employees under outside ownership. USDA research, using 2018 cow-calf data, found that total economic cost per cow was much lower on operations with at least 500 cows than on operations with 20 to 49 cows, largely because machinery, buildings, overhead, and unpaid labor were spread across more animals. Operating costs themselves varied less by herd size. A cow still needs feed and care whether she belongs to a herd of 40 or 400. TCH can show positive cash flow while providing a poor return on the owner's labor and capital. Suppose the owner performs maintenance, checks cattle, manages records, delivers calves, and handles emergencies without drawing a formal salary. The bank balance may improve after cattle are sold, but part of that apparent profit is unpaid compensation. If a manager must be hired, the expense becomes visible and the economics change immediately. An absentee owner may need a ranch manager, additional hands, bookkeeping, and stronger controls over purchasing and livestock records. The same property can therefore produce one result when owner-operated and a very different result when professionally managed. Machinery can magnify this problem. A tractor, loader, mower, baler, feed wagon, pickup, trailer, utility vehicle, and other tools may all be useful, but ownership is not automatically the cheapest answer. Equipment creates depreciation, interest, insurance, fuel, storage, maintenance, and replacement costs. A machine that saves money on a large operation can become an underused asset on a smaller one. Custom hiring, machinery sharing, leasing, or buying used equipment may preserve capital, although each alternative has reliability and scheduling risks. The correct fleet is the one that supports the production calendar without consuming more cash than the work justifies. Ranches rarely fail because they own too little polished machinery. They can fail because debt payments continue after the machine's productive. Advantage disappears. Cash flow timing is the structural pressure underneath all of this. Calf sales may be concentrated in one season, but expenses arrive before, during, and after that sale. Breeding, calving, pasture, preparation, veterinary work, fuel, repairs, insurance, and payroll must be funded while the calves are still growing. The ranch therefore needs working capital, not merely valuable assets. A land-rich owner can still be cash poor. If the operating line is already stretched when drought begins or prices weaken, the ranch may have to sell cows rather than calves. That decision can provide immediate cash and reduce feed demand, but it removes future production. Rebuilding later may be expensive, especially when many producers are trying to buy replacement females at the same time. The national herd illustrates how slowly this biological system adjusts. USDA reported 86.2 million cattle and calves on U.S. farms at the start of 2026, including 27.6 million beef cows, with the beef cow inventory down from the prior year. A smaller breeding herd can support stronger cattle prices, but those prices do not automatically translate into easy profit. Replacement animals also become more expensive. Feed and financing costs remain relevant, and herd expansion takes time because a retained heifer must mature, breed, calve, and raise an animal before that decision creates sale revenue. The same cycle works in reverse. When supply expands, ranchers make production decisions today and discover the full market result years later. W-cycle into a liquidity test. During severe drought, the owner must choose among buying expensive forage, moving cattle, reducing the herd, or accepting damage to pasture condition. USDA's livestock disaster programs exist because grazing losses can be financially significant. But assistance does not restore every lost calf, replace every productive cow, or remove the timing problem. A producer still needs records, eligibility, applications, and enough liquidity to act before aid arrives. Flood, wildfire, extreme cold, heat, disease, and water failure create different versions of the same problem. The operating system can lose capacity faster than the herd can be resized without economic damage. Elected losses, but it does not make ranching predictable. Coverage may address weather indexes, livestock deaths, forage, property, liability, vehicles, or employees, while deductibles, exclusions, reporting rules, and limits still matter. Other risks remain difficult to insure, including poor breeding performance, weak pasture management, employee turnover, water failure, and an unfavorable local market. Resilience comes from conservative stocking, multiple water sources, maintained facilities, reserves, diversified income, useful coverage, and financing that leaves room for a bad year. Daniel is reviewing a simplified planning model for a 300-cow operation. The figures are assumptions for education, not a claim about a typical ranch. He expects 88% of the cows to produce saleable calves, giving him 264 calves at an assumed average gross receipt of $1,750 per calf. Calf sales would produce $462,000. He adds $48,000 from expected cull animal sales, bringing gross ranch revenue to $510,000. Then he budgets $300,000 for feed, pasture, veterinary care, supplies, fuel, repairs, paid labor, and marketing. Machinery, ownership, insurance, taxes, administration, and other overhead add $105,000. Before land financing and owner compensation, the model leaves $105,000. That result sounds acceptable, until the missing claims on the cash are restored. If Daniel expects $60,000 for his own labor, only $45,000 remains before principal payments and income taxes. If land or acquisition debt requires more cash than that, the cattle enterprise does not cover the financing. A 10% drop in calf receipts would reduce revenue by $46,200, and added $70,000 of drought feed would turn the operating result negative even before major capital repairs. On the other hand, stronger conception, better survival, heavier calves, efficient grazing, and disciplined equipment ownership could improve the model. The lesson is not that a 300-cow ranch earns a specific amount. It is that small percentage changes in production and price can overwhelm a narrow margin. Margin break-even should therefore be calculated in more than one way. The first is operating break-even. Can livestock and related revenue pay current operating expenses? The second is full cost break-even. Can revenue also cover depreciation, paid and unpaid labor, taxes, insurance, interest, and a reasonable charge for land and capital? The third is cash break-even. Can the actual timing of receipts meet loan payments and bills without emergency asset sales? A ranch can pass one test and fail another. It may generate positive operating income while failing to compensate the owner. It may show accounting profit while lacking cash during the summer. It may cover the cattle operation while producing too little return to justify the price paid for the land. This is where land appreciation must be separated from ranch profit. USDA reported continued increases in average farm real estate values through 2025. But appreciation is neither guaranteed nor spendable operating income. It appears as equity only if the market value truly rises, and realizing it usually requires a sale, refinancing, or other transaction. Higher land value can even increase barriers for the next generation and make expansion difficult. A ranch owner may become wealthier on paper while remaining unable to replace a tractor without borrowing. The cattle business and the land investment should therefore be evaluated as connected but distinct components. One produces operating cash, while the other may preserve or increase capital over a much longer horizon. Prove the connection. Hunting leases may monetize habitat, although liability, access, and seasonal conflicts require control. Hay sales can turn surplus forage into cash, but excessive removal weakens the ranch's reserve. Custom grazing earns fees for managing other people's livestock, reducing some cattle price exposure while retaining forage and performance risk. Lodging, events, direct beef, energy leases, and conservation programs may add income. Yet each creates new contracts, permits, insurance needs, or workload. Diversification works best when it fits the land and management team. Conservation easements require especially careful explanation. A qualified easement can permanently restrict development or subdivision while allowing specified agricultural uses. Under current federal rules, certain qualified farmers and ranchers may be eligible for a deduction limit tied to 100% of adjusted gross income after other charitable contributions, with unused qualified contributions potentially carried forward for up to 15 years. That does not mean every ranch or every easement produces a large tax benefit. Eligibility, appraisal, conservation, purpose, documentation, entity structure, continued agricultural use, and transaction design matter. The restriction is permanent and can reduce future flexibility. This is an area for independent legal and tax review, not a shortcut that should be inserted into an acquisition spreadsheet as guaranteed value. Tax treatment also varies by state and locality. Some jurisdictions value qualifying land based partly on agricultural use rather than its unrestricted market value. The qualification tests, minimum use periods, rollback taxes, application deadlines, and consequences of changing use can be significant. Keeping a few animals on expensive land does not automatically create the same treatment everywhere. A buyer must verify the rules for the exact parcel before closing. The broader principle is valid. Public policy can affect carrying cost, but tax status should support a genuine ownership plan, not conceal an operating model that cannot survive without assumptions the property may not meet. So who is ranch ownership suitable for? A strong candidate understands agriculture or is willing to hire credible management, has enough working capital to withstand weak seasons, evaluates land by productive capacity rather than scenery, and does not depend on immediate cattle profit to service an aggressive purchase price. The buyer also needs patience. Pasture improvement, herd genetics, water systems, employee development, and market relationships take years. A weak candidate arrives with heavy debt, buys equipment before designing the operation, stocks cattle to the maximum in a favorable year, assumes appreciation will solve cash flow problems, and treats personal enjoyment as evidence of commercial viability. Due diligence should move from the ground upward. Verify title, access, boundaries, easements, water and mineral rights, environmental issues, and permitted uses. Measure forage condition and carrying capacity locally. Inspect fences, roads, water systems, corrals, buildings, utilities, and wildfire exposure. Review herd records, pregnancy, mortality, weaning, veterinary protocols, sale history, labor, leases, equipment, insurance, taxes, and financing. Model drought, lower prices, higher feed cost, repairs, and manager compensation. Separate lifestyle value from business return. Enjoyment is a legitimate reason to own land, but it is not profit. The economics of owning a ranch are not captured by the cattle check, the acreage, or the estimated property value alone. The ranch is a coordinated system in which land supports forage, infrastructure distributes water and controls animals, labor converts biology into saleable weight, and cash reserves bridge the months between expense and revenue. Cattle can produce operating income. Land can preserve or build wealth. Diversified activities can stabilize the calendar. But none of those results is automatic, and each can fail for a different reason. The owners who endure are not simply the ones with the largest ranches or the highest sale prices. They are the ones who match herd size to forage, equipment to workload, debt to dependable cash flow, and ambition to the amount of risk their balance sheet can actually absorb.